Hello and welcome to ESG Unearthed, a collaboration between Future of Mining 365 and Sympact Advisory. My name is Liz Freele, Managing Partner at Sympact, an ESG think tank and consultancy serving the mining industry and beyond. Joining me today, I have Mark Selby, CEO of Junior Explorer, the Canada Nickel Company, which interestingly also owns NetZero Metals Inc. and has been integrating practical ESG considerations from a fairly early stage. Welcome, Mark.
Liz, great to talk to you today.
Yeah, things seem to be progressing very well for you and the team. So the company recently filed a PEA and announced an interesting additional discovery. And from my perspective, your CO2 emissions intensity estimates look incredibly impressive. There was that big media frenzy when Elon Musk begged the world on the Tesla earnings call July 2020 to mine more environmentally sensitive nickel. And within days, Canada Nickel put its hand up. And that's when I personally started following you guys a lot more closely. The project's emissions are predicted to be lower than 99.7% of global nickel production. Is that right?
Yeah, no, we were very, very happy with where the initial number landed. So just over 2 tons of CO2 per ton of nickel. And that's Skarn Associates, we're the same group that do a lot of the CO2 benchmarking for the major mining companies. Yeah, and so to be right down at the curve is great, but our objective from day one has really been about being a zero carbon producer. So we've got a number of opportunities between the PEA and the feasibility study to take the number that we're generating, take that number even lower. But the most exciting thing about these types of nickel deposits and what makes them a true differentiator, and we believe to be the next generation of nickel deposits, is the waste, the rock that hosts these deposits, which ends up in our case as tailings and waste rock. It spontaneously absorbs CO2 when it's exposed to air. So that number doesn't include any benefit from that carbon sequestration that our tailings and waste rock will naturally do when they're deposited. So our tailings are non-deleterious, and they have this added benefit. So it's pretty amazing. So yeah, that's why we were pretty keen to start talking about that as quickly as we could last summer.
And so what excites me about the company is that you sort of started to touch on it already, but this clearly has been architected from the beginning. This is not chance that Elon Musk goes, hey, we need net zero nickel, and you guys are like, yep, right here. I'd love to dig into that a bit more with you today.
Sure.
So let's start first with the strategy that you advocate for when you're building your asset portfolio, if you have low carbon operations in mind. Because I know you talk about this need to choose from the get-go deposits that are inherently lower carbon. So what does that mean to you, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, so again, it was something that we wanted to do from the very beginning. We had actually been with the Elon Musk announcement, been working on it several months before Elon made his tweet, and we were actually going to announce it about a week and a half before that, and we needed to get some more legal work done. So we thought, oh, we'll just delay it another week and a half, and literally, he put it out the Thursday before we were going to release it on Monday. So it was a great sense of timing, but again, it wasn't like I said by chance. It's something that we really architected from day one. And again, I think, there's a huge opportunity in mining right now to really look at how you can basically architect your company to be, not only low carbon, but zero carbon. And it's things like, there's not that many factors, that can take you from the end of the curve, right into that very good position. So first off, is look at those areas of the world, and you can go hire a consultant who can map out all the zero carbon grids in the world. That's very clearly known today. And again, where we are in Timmins is all hydroelectricity. So about as zero carbon as you can get. The second thing you want to do is be around infrastructure, so that in terms of moving materials in and shipping materials out, ideally you have access to rail. But if worst case, you at least have access to highways, so you can use sizable trucks, that have less carbon than having to use small vehicles on very remote, long roads that burn lots of carbon. And again, would make it very difficult to try and electrify them. And then, the other key piece of it is to have, an ability where you have actually a local workforce. So again, you're not having to fly them in and out on week in, week on shifts. And then the last piece of it, again, there's some parts of your operation that you will need some form of hydrocarbon. And if you have access to a natural gas, that you've got 4 hydrogens for every carbon you're burning. And so again, where we are in Timmins, it has that, and then if you're really lucky, like we were, the mineral deposits you're pursuing have this ability, have tailings that can soak up carbon when they're behind. There's some diamond operations that have that. So again, if you drew maps around each of those different factors, you can very quickly zoom in on just certain parts of the world, where you can have a low carbon operation. And again, the big mining companies, I think, are going to start to think this way. And really, Timmins is a really, really, really special place, and I think is a massive opportunity for, Timmins, for Ontario, for Canada to take advantage, because we do really have a few of these places to create zero carbon clusters. That'll be a tremendous benefit.
That's really neat. You clearly thought about it a lot. So it seems like there is a new company every day that is jumping on this whole net zero bandwagon. That's great, but let's be real, very few have any concrete or feasible plans of how they're going to get there. But at Canada Nickel, you guys have launched NetZero Metals Inc. So that's a company in its own right to develop zero carbon production of nickel, cobalt, and iron. And you've even applied for associated trademarks. So I'm guessing, given these efforts, I have to assume this is more than just a marketing play for you. What are some of the key technologies and strategies around that you're looking to employ from the design stage?
Yeah, so the key piece, again, when you think about it from the very first day you start your project, then you can, again, for us, the benefit of being a large open pit operation is, today there are trolley trucks, that use the same equipment that you see in streetcars, like we have here in Toronto, that basically tie in to overhead wires, and you can eliminate a substantial amount of diesel. You can use electric shovels that, again, literally, they're not quite the same power cord that you have at home, but you can basically plug them in, and that provides all the power that those shovels need. It's again looking at the downstream part of the business, and being able to look to co-locate that part of the business, and as well minimize the impact that your downstream operations have from your products, as well as going into your operations themselves.
Right, and that makes me think of another question I wanted to ask you. Your PEA is based on the idea of making stainless steel, like on site. It seemed a bit random, but from a net zero carbon perspective, why do you guys do that? What's the significance of that?
Yeah, so there's, to me, and I think first, coming back to part of your other question in terms of, there's a lot of companies that are talking about lower carbon, and to me, what's frustrating when I look at a lot of the major mining companies is, they've got some strategies around low carbon, but again, unless you're prepared to really re-engineer your portfolio, it's going to be difficult to do it, and there are opportunities there. And so, my term, that the way I think about them is they're kind of the tobacco farmers, that they produce a product that, okay, it's fine, it's just leaves. But then, from a CO2 perspective, that their products end up generating, because most of their revenue is iron ore, met coal, and then obviously thermal coal has a massive CO2 footprint. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we sell it to China. They have, they use fairly dirty coal to produce what they're producing, but that's okay. We're just tobacco farmers. So, they're looking at, basically decarbonizing tobacco production as opposed to completely rethinking, how they manufacture and how their products are used, and to me, that's the massive opportunity. And so that's where, back to your second question, around producing, looking at producing stainless steel locally. So, what's a little ironic is we will be using, by the feasibility study, look at having, probably half our nickel will go to the EV market. But, a bunch of our material, we also produce a pile of iron and a pile of chrome. And those are the 3 minerals you need to make stainless steel. And what's ironic is we're going to use the same gear that they use in Indonesia and to make very dirty carbon nickel. But in our case, one, we're going to power it with zero carbon electricity. So, all of a sudden the carbon footprint drops extremely dramatically. Number two, we can use natural gas to do a lot of the reduction part of it, where you're getting rid of the oxygen. So those oxygens are going to pair with the hydrogens and become water, as opposed to a lot more CO2. The third piece is in the Timmins area itself, and again, this is where when you really step back and think about net zero from day one, the company that owns the forest rights on our properties, and then also owns massive properties in the area, they're looking for ways to use what's called biochar. So you basically, use trees that would be either waste wood or don't really have any commercial value, but you basically turn them into charcoal, just like your barbecue, and that becomes another source of reductant. So, and again, that's a renewable source of carbon. So it has, zero net impact, on the planet. So, our stainless operations, right out of the gate should generate very, very, very little CO2. Plus, we're feeding it with 10 times higher grade material than what they're using in the laterite operation. So all of those things will dramatically reduce the amount of CO2 that gets generated. And then what we're looking at is by co-locating those facilities, where our tailings are sitting, is looking at using our tailings basically to scrub any CO2 that does come out of those processes. So, we're working through that right now, but, our hope is, we'll be even a zero carbon producer from the stainless steel part of thing. And again, stainless steel is a great product. And if we can, help make it a low carbon or zero carbon product that makes it that much more competitive against carbon steel, we'll be in great shape.
Yeah. Very much, it looks like also integrating innovation principles of circular economy too, clearly.
Oh, for sure. Because I mean, there's even, again, maybe on another conversation, we're looking at, because the nature of them, when these minerals get absorb carbon, the physical properties change and they actually cement up. So we're going to be looking potentially of ways, can we use our tailings as a filler in cement to reduce the amount of cement that needs to get generated, and again, cement is another, steel is one big, huge generator of CO2 and cement is another one. So again, if we can use what we're doing to help that, it's a massive, massive benefit. And again, I think the mining industry, is very much focused on, we just produce concentrate, right? Or we just produce this product. We don't really worry about the markets. We don't really worry about how that product gets used. But again, I think think about, can you choose a location that's geologically endowed that can allow you to be zero carbon on one end, and then two, think about how what you're producing plugs into the broader market. You can create a massive amount of value, and the market opportunity for us is, the 304 stainless. It is the highest premium product in the nickel world today in the U.S. and Europe. Prices are much lower in China because there's a lot more demand, but both U.S. and Europe have tariff walls up against imports from sort of countries, and the fact that most of the stainless production going forward is going to be very high carbon production from Indonesia. Those walls are going to get even higher. So it's a great product for us to make that can deliver low carbon, and we think can add additional revenue, which will just makes the project that much more valuable.
Absolutely, all very thoughtful, very ambitious, quite admirable. What are the big challenges to get there? What's missing? What do you need to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, the biggest push now is just in terms of, you don't have zero carbon choices for certain pieces of equipment. So, ironically, the biggest trucks are where you have the most choice in terms of these kind of trolley trucks that exist today. But on terms of smaller trucks, there's a lot of discussion around building sort of smaller 40-ton, 100-ton trucks that would be, fully electric, but they're not quite there yet. But I'm hoping by the time we get the feasibility study next year, that we'll have some zero carbon options that we could provide to our contractor. So, within our current 2 tons, those early year diesel emissions from the smaller contractor fleet is the by far the largest source of it. So, as more low carbon options emerge, that's for equipment, that's really the biggest challenge in terms of, our specific operation.
Any other big challenges?
No, the great thing is right now, we're very lucky again, and where we are, Timmins community is very supportive. First Nations are very supportive. local First Nations group is involved in hydroelectric power generation. And so, again, having these discussions from day one, they have, there's generating stations that are, upriver from where we are. And, those have been around since the 1950s and 60s. And, there's opportunities to literally just change out, the existing equipment. You're not going to increase the level of the lakes at all. You're just being more efficient in terms of how you capture the water that's going through the dam today, and you'll generate an incremental amount of power that we could use. And the challenge is, the big use is far to the south and not nearby. So, by again having a project that's close to some generating stations, it creates new opportunities, to be able to again have a net benefit, for the province as a whole, if we can help justify, reconfiguring some of that grid in the northeast part of the province.
That's pretty cool. I love how you see the challenges as opportunities. So thank you so much for joining me today, Mark. It's been super insightful. Do you have any last thoughts, comments, or maybe advice that you'd like to share with listeners?
Yeah, no, I think, today, you only get in the mining industry 1 or 2 chances, chance every couple decades where you get this real, there's a real transformation going on in terms of, there's either a new technology or a new market opportunity. The last one, of this scale was the emergence of China, in the early 2000s. And so, again, I think those companies, to talk about that very short list of attributes, that can really make your project a lot lower carbon. And those majors who very quickly start to refocus on getting out of the tobacco farming business and really, again, in terms of thinking about the downstream and owning your, S blank, 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 I think, it is one of those chances to make a huge amount of money for investors, and a huge amount of money for all the stakeholders, and again, benefit the planet by, being able to deliver products in a really low carbon way. So, again, I would encourage investors to jump all over those companies that, are leading the pack. And, the more people do that, the more, sort of the faster and harder and quicker we can go. So.
Awesome. Thanks.